Good morning and welcome to the Millennial MoBro web series, YouTube series. Today, I am going to be talking with a very dear friend of mine. His name is Travis Catt. Travis and I have kind of followed each other since 2009. On paper, we were the exact same person. And we'll probably talk about this a little bit in the chat. But we were the exact same person for about 4 years, where literally we worked the same jobs, we lived in the same place, we went to the same schools. If you didn't know we were different, then you would never know. And we're going to kind of talk today about one of the jobs that we did. Travis is waiting to get in here, so I'm going to bring him in right now. Professor Catt.
Yo, what up?
1 second, I'm not hearing you.
Hello?
System. Let's see here.
Is it me you're looking for?
Things, whatever. Why can't I? Oh, that's why I can't do these, because I'm muted. There we go. How are you, sir?
Good. We're gonna clean up a little bit. There we go. No.
Hey,
I should move the towel too.
I'm not judging even a little bit. You look great. I was just giving you an introduction. Travis has 2 master's degrees because he wanted to be mastered square. He's got a master's in social work from ASU and a master's of sociology from U of A. He just decided to, do
Also ASU.
That was also ASU, but you were working for U of A.
I was working for the U of A. I was working for the University of Arizona, and the policy in Arizona is if you work for any of the 3 major universities, U of A, NAU, ASU, they'll pay for a degree from any of the other universities.
Holy cow. Well, there you go. And I got my master's from U of A, or not U of A, I wish.
NAU.
NAU, Northern
Go
Arizona. Go, you can kiss my axe. Oh my goodness. It's so good to see you today, man.
It's good to see you.
Welcome to the YouTube series. I approached Travis last week about, getting together and talking, and we hadn't really decided on a topic yet. And then a hero of ours passed away last week. His name's Ron Searle. He was the founder of Arbinger Boys Ranch, which for me was a very foundational job for why I work with kids today. Kind of going into working with kids. I always knew that I liked good kids. They were fun and easy, but taking that job at Arbinger Boys Ranch, I was very nervous that I was going to be very overwhelmed working with hard boys. And I found out that I loved it. And a big part of loving that was working with Ron and Arbinger. And so Travis, why don't you tell us a little bit about your experience with the ranch, and also if you could give us an overview of Arbinger from your perspective.
Okay. So first, let's talk about that, how we got to the ranch. So me and Tanner were EFY counselors together. Actually, with your guest last week, Greg Malone, we all did EFY together.
We did.
And Greg had worked on the ranch previously, and we had never even heard of it. And he's like, hey, let's all go work there together. And Tanner's smiling because he knows where this is going.
Oh, do I know where this is going?
So we all drive down together, and Arivaca, Arizona is not close to anything. It's about halfway between Tucson and Nogales.
Middle of nowhere.
20 miles off the highway, right? And so we get there, and I think Greg drove, or we rode with like a friend, like a mutual friend, and Greg decided that the ranch was not for him because it is a difficult environment. And
a lot of F words.
Yeah, a lot of swearing. I once had a kid that I counted, and in the span of 2 minutes, he used the F word about 80 times.
Oh.
He used it as a noun, a verb, an adverb, an adjective, a subject, a predicate, it was masterful.
Has that one down.
Yeah, but Greg ended up saying, hey, ranch isn't for me, and he resigned that day and left, and we didn't know anyone. We didn't know what the job was, and so we were kind of stuck there. But luckily, Ron was running the place along with a few good co-workers, and so Ron was really a huge mentor to me and you as far as teaching us Arbinger. So what Arbinger is is it's basically a bringing a psychology spin to the gospel, or gospel-based psychology, however you want to look at it. The whole purpose of Arbinger is to, one, listen to what Arbinger calls your inner sense, like you get a sense to do stuff, and to listen to that, which in the gospel we would call listening to the Holy Ghost. And then as well as improving your relationships, both professionally and personally, by seeing people truly as people, and not seeing them as a way of getting what you need, not seeing them as an obstacle in your way of what your wants and desires are, but just seeing people for who they are and treating them as such.
Yeah. And I remember when I first learned about it, especially, you know, Travis and I worked there together for about a year, a little under a year. And then Travis went back at a later point, and I went back as well for another later point. And I remember the first time I got exposed to Arbinger, I was like, this sounds silly. This is not my thing. But then working in an Arbinger rich environment, they would talk about these concepts of getting in the box, getting out of the box, and seeing people as people. And you'd see people get into what they would call collusion. And there's this whole diagram about, I see him as an object. And either way, I started to literally watch what we were talking about happen between kids. And that's when Arbinger changed my life. It's like, oh my gosh, this is real, and this really happens. And I'm not going to ever proclaim to be amazing at Arbinger, because I'm not. But I know that I'm always trying to better integrate it into my life. It's one of those arrows in my quiver that I'm always, and I use it a lot. If you look on my wall over here, I don't know if you guys can see it.
Hangman.
Not the hangman, over here. That is Arbinger. I always have it written on my wall, and I'm always using it with my kids, because I have teenagers that don't see people as people, but rather they are all objects to me.
Well, and it's hard too, you know, as a teenager, you're going through a lot of changes, you know, hormones, puberty. Teenagers naturally are egotistical, and that's not a knock on them. Like, there's amazing teenagers, but you know, you're developing your independence, and in order to do that, you have to be thinking of yourself and like who I am and where do I fit in my family, in my friends, and in life. And because you're focusing so much on yourself, it's easy to lose track of, you know, other people exist, other people have feelings, and you know, they have all these things that they're wanting and needing to accomplish in their lives.
Well, and also on top of that, where teenagers are mentally, they literally are not able to really think outside of themselves. Like that just doesn't compute for them, and it just their mental development is not there yet. And so when you're training them for this stuff, when they get it, it's just such a powerful tool that's going to set them up that much further ahead.
Oh, absolutely.
And so I guess if I was going to tell someone in like a minute or less about Arbinger, I would say that it is the study of interactions with people and seeing people as people rather than objects. And there's so much more to it than that. But when you can grasp that picture, that you aren't a vehicle for me, you aren't in my way, you aren't something that I can just go around, but rather you are a person with hopes and dreams. You are important, you are valuable, and you are just as important as I am. Then you can go from there. And those would be the key attributes to Arbinger that I took away from it, at least.
And I completely agree with you. And I would add one more thing, which is Arbinger helps us cut through the lies we tell ourselves. So Arbinger, a lot of the reasons why we do what we do is because we feel justified in doing it, because we've kind of constructed this idea of, well, I'm doing this because X, Y, or Z reason, which is really us deceiving ourselves. One of the books that is on Arbinger that we use on the Boys Ranch is Leadership and Self-Deception, right? We deceive ourselves in order to make our behavior fit into, you know, this story we've told, when really we've kind of come to that conclusion on our own, and it could be far from the truth, but we do it because we feel like that justifies our actions.
And it's all real. So
And all the time.
Ron would always talk about what was the one that Ron would say about, was it doing the dishes? Is that
that's a commonly held example? Yeah,
I believe that's the where you know, he'd get home from, he's worked all day and he gets home and he has a sense to go and do the dishes, but he doesn't do the dishes, so he doesn't honor that sense. And why? Because I've worked all day, and because I'm the breadwinner, and because and because of that, these dishes don't get done. And so then he's frustrated at his wife because the dishes aren't done. And later on, his wife's gonna do some little thing, and he's gonna be mad at her because she didn't do the dishes. And
then he's gonna react, and then she's gonna see that reaction, be like, well, he's mistreating me. And then she's going to react. And that's what you were alluding to earlier, that collusion cycle.
Absolutely. And it just builds on itself. And you see it in your everyday life. And yeah, it's just everywhere. And
Ron lived this. Like, Ron was just this incredible. I've seen the examples and the changes that it makes in human behavior when people start implementing Arbinger principles, which is basically just gospel-based psychology principles, right?
Yeah.
Because in the gospel, so in the, in the scriptures, a lot of the things that we focus on in the church and in what we're doing, and it's not a bad thing, is behavior-based, right? What's going to draw you closer to God, right? The primary answers: go to church, read your scriptures, and pray.
Yeah,
those are behaviors. Whereas Arbinger is actually trying to change your thoughts and your motivations behind your behaviors, right? So it says in the scriptures, Jesus looks on the heart, and Arbinger is trying to go a step beyond. It's not just the behavior; it's why are you doing what you're doing? Because you can do nice things for the wrong reasons if you're seeing people as vehicles, like, right, I want this to happen to me later on, so I'm going to be very nice to you and fulfill my calling, or I'm going to serve people because I want this later on. Great behavior, terrible motivation.
Yeah. Ron, that was always where Ron started with teaching on Arbinger, was there is something deeper than behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And that is our intent behind it. But that's not the right word. It's not intent. It was either way. There's something deeper than behavior, and it's our way of being. That's what it was. And so, for example, this morning as I was running out the door, my wife was like, "Hey, you need to give me a kiss." I can, as I'm rushing out the door, begrudgingly give her a kiss, or I can give my wife a loving kiss. Those are the exact same thing, but they are different because of my way of being and doing them.
Yeah.
So,
and Ron was just this incredible man, and he changed the lives of not just all the teenage boys that were on the ranch that went through the Arbinger, but also I'd say the people that worked there. I think I can speak for myself and probably speak for you, Tanner, that our lives have changed by adopting these principles and they've helped us professionally and also spiritually.
Ron changed my life. I am a better person because of Ron, and I can't say thank you enough to him for starting the ranch, doing the ranch, changing my life and many others. And I know that I'm glad that he's no longer suffering, because he was battling cancer for years and he put up a real fight. But I'm really grateful for Ron, and I'm hoping that this will be a good little tribute to him today.
Absolutely. And our thoughts and prayers are with Peggy and the family.
Yeah, for sure. We're all of the Searle family. They've been on my mind recently. So, well, either way, man, I know that we're both kind of at work, so we probably should go.
I did want to tell one story though before
please.
We cut it up. I'm not sure if I've ever told you this or not, and so this seems like a great place to do it over a YouTube video.
Yeah, yeah.
Have I ever told you I met one of the founders of the Arbinger Institute?
No, you never did tell me this.
I never told you this. Okay. And I was like, and so when preparing for this, I was like, oh, I'm not sure if I've ever told Tanner this, and I need to. So the Arbinger Institute was founded, and they're a consulting group that teaches Arbinger. We used it in behavioral health. You can use it in business. You can use it personally.
Seems like they like to use it in business a lot. That seems
yeah,
to be
they do like to use it a lot in business. Tanner, it seems like we've been looking for something to do on the side.
This is what we need to do on the side.
This is what we need to do is bring Arbinger out there, and also
bring it to
we'll do both. We can be the scuba diving Arbinger.
I've got too many things
that we enjoy in life.
I enjoy too many things in life, and I'm always like bored either way. Yes.
Yeah. So I met one of the founders of the Arbinger Institute. It was in California. I went there for a wedding, and I had been going through a rough time, and me and Tanner, we have a mutual friend named Amber Valencios.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And she had been going through a rough time, and I was like, hey, come with me to California. Like, I'd love to have a road trip buddy, / we can go to the beach and, eat good food and all of that. And I got a place to stay with my best friend's grandparents. And she was like, yeah, let's do that.
YOLO, let's go.
It was a real YOLO trip. Absolutely.
You're just a random guy I only kind of know. All right, let's do it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we kind of knew each other from EFY.
Yeah.
And
she's wonderful. She's one of my favorite people. I love Amber.
Yeah. Love Amber. Her and Francisco, very happy together, and very happy for them. And life is good.
They're in Utah. Good for them.
Utah. Life has treated them very well, and it makes me very, very happy. Yeah. They deserve it. So anyway, so we go out on this trip, and so we go on Sunday. We go to my best friend's grandparents' ward in Riverside, California. I want to say is where we were at. And so we walk into Sunday school, and the Sunday school teacher has everyone kind of in a circle. And I've been to a lot of Sunday schools, right? I've been to some good ones. I've been to some bad ones. This one was probably one of the most memorable ones I've ever been to, just because the instructor just had this spirit, this difference about him. He had everyone's names memorized in the first minute of class. He was very purposeful. He was very focused. It was a great discussion. He kind of just embodied that definition of people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Yeah.
He just seemed to care about people. And I was very impressed. And so afterwards, I talked to my best friend. I talked to the grandparents, and I was like, hey, who is this guy? What's his deal? And he's like, oh, that's his name's Dwayne Boyce. And he, and I was like, oh, okay, so is he retired? What does he do? He's like, actually, he founded some consulting company back at BYU back in Utah, and it was called, I'm not sure if you've heard, it's called the Arbinger Institute. And I was like, what?
Have I heard about this?
Have I heard of it? This has affected my life, and this has affected my career, what I do.
Oh, and so cow. That's awesome.
And it was just such a weird joining of call it coincidence, call it the hand of fate, that I met one of the founders, and how he lived his life had a very palpable effect on me. And then seeing oh, he's living what he's teaching.
I love that.
It just helped reinforce this idea that it really is gospel psychology. It's, if you want to change your motivations behind why you live the gospel, you study this and you try and live this life.
Absolutely. And as you talk about this guy that was just living this, Ron was that.
Oh,
Ron
absolutely.
Lived Arbinger. That was everywhere he talked. He was, how do I use this, and how do I better integrate this into my life? Always.
And so when people adopt this, and I'm going to kind of call it this way, when you take that next step to living the gospel even fuller, not going past the behaviors and instead going to the motivations, there is a very obvious light and spirit about you that people notice. And once again, the motivations is not so that you are seen as a good person, it's because you want to be a good person. You want to see people as people.
Absolutely. So If anyone's interested in learning more about Arbinger and this, Travis, you mentioned one of the books, Leadership and Self-Deception is usually where we start. That's kind of a business perspective. The next one is, The Anatomy of Peace.
Yep.
Which is that's more from a perspective of how Travis and I did it. It was working with kids, but it's a little slower.
It was more personal, family based, whereas leadership self-deception a little bit more professional, business based.
Yeah. And then one that's not as story based, but is more like the Bible of Arbinger is a book called Bonds That Make Us Free. All three of those books are wonderful reads.
That one I didn't know about.
Yeah. That's like that's like the Doctrine and Covenants of Arbinger. It's really good. So be sure to check those out if you're interested in this sort of stuff. Yeah. So Travis, thank you so much for making some time for me this morning. I'm sure that I will have you on again. I just absolutely love your perspectives. I think you are just so smart and admirable in your interactions. I got a letter from your mom earlier this week, just talking about how she appreciates our friendship, and I truly appreciate you and all that you do for me and my family. I look at your daughters as nieces of mine, and I just love you guys. Your wife is wonderful, and we just love you guys. And thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for doing this, Tanner. I think this is just amazing.
Well, hopefully we can keep doing these. I'm trying to figure out who to bring in. I'd like to talk to someone about our recent elections and what we should expect to see going forward and that sort of stuff. But we'll see. I don't know. I haven't figured out who I'm going to bring in next week yet, but it's going to be someone fun. It'll be one of our friends.
We've had some good conversations.
There's been a lot of chat about that in our group chats. So
yeah.
All right. Thank you, sir. You have a good one.
Hey, you too.
Happy Wednesday.
Happy Wednesday.